Well, hello again. We're here for one of our updates. Here with Paul Sams from Dutton Gregory. So welcome, Paul. Nice to see you.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
All right, very well, thank you. Do you want to give us a bit of your background? What is it you specialise in?
Well, I seem to specialise in sitting at home at the moment, in front of the computer, dealing with video calls. But my background is I'm a property lawyer. I'm head of property at Dutton Gregory Solicitors. So I predominantly deal with residential property, residential development, leasehold enfranchisement work. So that's extending leases or buying the freehold blocks of flats where the leaseholders want to do that. And one of my niche areas is equity release. So releasing monies from properties for over 55s, which in itself is a specialist area. I also have the remit for overseeing all of the property work in the firm. So I fill lots of forms out and do lots of compliance as well.
So you don't really do very much then?
No, not at all, no. My wife will tell you that I don't do very much, and that's probably true around the house.
Yeah. Interesting. Let's just follow on from the enfranchisement there. A lot of people don't understand that they do have the possibility of changing their lease. They think they're just stuck into it. So if I'm a owner of a lease, or if I've got a leasehold property, what could I do with it?
In theory, you could do anything that's legal within it if you have the consent of the landlord and the landlord agrees. So, for example, if you wanted to turn it into, I don't know, a shop, you could ask your landlord, I know it's residential, Mr. Landlord, could I turn it into a shop? And the landlord's probably going to say no, but in theory, if you had your consent, you could. Most enfranchisement issues stem from the fact that residential leases are a depreciating asset. And by that, there are three fundamental ways you can own a property in England. There is freehold, leasehold, and common hold. And common hold, I always tell the story, was something that Tony Blair and his guys came up with as an alternative to leasehold and freehold. And some of my peers nationally would say that common hold is the solution to all problems. But if I told you there are more books written about common hold than common hold units in the UK, you will probably get the feeling that it's not the most popular. And of course, mortgage lenders won't really lend on it, so that's an issue. But with freehold, you own the property for an indefinite period. It's yours, you've got it from year dot to when you sell it. With leasehold, you have a finite term. So that's either 99 years, 125, 155, 999, but there is a time limit on it. Enfranchisement lawyers, and probably I would say more surveyors and mortgage lenders worry when there's less than 80 years left on the lease. When there's less than 80 years term left on the lease, then this magical figure called marriage values, and it's not something that Donald Trump or Rod Stewart would talk about, or perhaps they should. It's the increase in value to the freeholder of granting a lease extension. And enfranchisement generally in a nutshell is that we try and get people to extend their lease before there's less than 80 years on it to ensure that they can then sell their property for what its market value is. When it's got a shorter lease, it's not as desirable to buyers and certainly not as desirable to mortgage lenders. So our job is to try and get the best deal we can for our leasehold owners when it comes to doing a lease extension. The thing to bear in mind is that, as I said, you can speak to your landlord about anything, but when it comes to a lease extension, you've got a statutory option depending on what criteria you meet. So you can actually force your landlord to give you a lease extension.
Okay. Yeah, because one of the big mistakes that we find that a lot of landlords make, especially when they're buying leasehold, is they don't read the lease. And we say to them, it's just critical that you have a conveyancing person who understands rental and understands leasehold, because you could end up with a property you just can't let out.
One of my favourite stories, and I've got lots of anecdotal stories, because I used to do this before I had hair, although that might be the kids that did this. In fact, literally, they did it at the weekend. So I'm looking like a fat Duncan Goodhue, for those that remember him. I was thinking about recruiting this list of ones many years ago, and I thought, I'll just ask his old boss, who's a sort of mate of mine in the law, what he's about. And he said, well, Paul, he said, he's a nice guy. I went, oh, well, hang on, you're saying he's a nice guy. You're not telling me he's a brilliant lawyer straight away. What's the issue? He said, well, on his first day, he walked into my office and said, what are you doing, John? And John said, I'm reading a lease. And this bloke went, what? Every page? And I think that's where people go wrong. leaseholds, because I act for a lot of developers, and I've done some leases over time that one of my colleagues, Rachel's, is always telling me I will go straight to hell for drafting them. The favourite one is escalating ground rents.
Yep.
Because I've sold properties before, although this wasn't the intention. Honestly, it wasn't the intention. But I sold 4 out of 5 in a block with new leases, and it was the 5th one that was a smaller firm that was acting for the buyers. All the others had national firms acting, and they hadn't spotted it. And the lease said that the ground rent doubled every 5 years, or went up by RPI, whichever was the greater.
Yeah.
Well, it started at £100. Well, by the time it gets to the end of the lease, it was about 844 million.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Which is a bit of a concern. Although my client called me when I pointed out on the 5th lease, can I sell this? I went, yes, and said, congratulations, Rob. I said, your grandchildren are going to be multi-millionaires.
Yes, yeah.
That's a prime example. There are lots of clauses within leases that, again, I've seen and sometimes I may have drafted, shall we say, which make provision for my favourite. Obviously, I'd never do this, but my favourite to see is that it will say that the managing agent or freeholder for a block can charge 10% of any cost of any works. Now, that seems fine as a monitoring fee. It's not bad. A lot of managing agents charge that anyway in relation to their fees. But if there were 10 flats in a block and the roof needed repairing, say it was £10,000 worth of repairs, you would think, the managing agent only gets £1,000 split across all 10 flats. Well, the way the lease is worded, and again, I may have worded these a few times in the past, that 10% is per flat. So if there's £10,000 worth of repairs, the managing agent, more likely the freeholder, is going to make £10,000 worth of fees. And there's nothing illegal about that, because they can justify it by saying it's in the lease. And if it's in the lease and the parties have had solicitors, then it's considered what's called a commercial bargain, and they're tied by it, no matter how morally dubious it is.
And I mean, just a basic clause, of course, is whether or not you're even allowed to let a property, or technically sublet a property. So,
yes, when it comes to letting, I get people saying, "Well, I don't want my landlord to know who I've got there." And I say, "Well, that's the point. From a tenant's point of view, if you're the leaseholder, you want to be able to rent it out to whoever you want, with restrictions. From a landlord's point of view, they're saying, well, hang on, we want to know who you're renting your flat out to."
The head landlord you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah. So the guys that own the block, they want to know who it's been rented out to for many reasons: security, insurance. For example, your building's insurance would be vitiated and invalidated if, for example, you were renting it out to a serial arsonist, because the insurance company wouldn't be keen on having them live there. Same if you were renting it out to a serial fraudster, they would be worried that there's some sort of fraud going on, and that could vitiate the insurance. So that's why that clause is there. Of course, it's really there because the freeholder can make money from it. Yeah.
And thank you for that, Paul. We will be getting together again very soon to talk about more videos. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.